Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Mod Warframe. Today we're going to be doing a subscriber request for a weapon build coming from Demolition Gaming, which is to take a look at another of the heavy melee weapons following the buff, which is the Gram. Now the Gram itself is a very early melee weapon, first appearing in update 6.2, but apart from a few people who loved it, the Gram was forgotten by most and turned into nothing more than mastery fodder. However, has the recent buff changed that? I believe it has, and let's have a quick look. Why? The changes made by the developers were very kind to the Gram, taking the base damage from an extremely low 45 damage and just over doubling it to 100 damage a hit, with the majority of it coming in the form of slash damage. Now in addition to that, they buffed the status chance from 10 to 15% and the crit chance from 7.5 to 15%. When you combine that with one of the fastest attack speeds out of any of the heavy melee weapons, very wide multi-hitting swings and a very decent knockdown that has a pretty decent area of effect, the Gram really has been given a second chance at life, and it's definitely got the stats to be able to pull that off. Now normally when I do these types of videos, I do positives and negatives for any weapon, but honestly there really isn't any real negatives to speak of with this weapon, which is very good and makes it a very well-rounded weapon. So now we've had a look at the actual weapon itself, let's have a quick look at the stance mods that the Gram can make use of. Now the Gram comes with a choice of two stance mods, Rending Crane, which matches the polarity of the weapon slot, and Cleaving Whirlwind, which doesn't. Personally, I prefer Rending Crane over Cleaving Whirlwind anyway, which is a bonus for this weapon. The majority of melee weapons struggle with airborne units, things like shield drones or the infested Mutilista Osprey. And Rending Crane has a very good overhead attack that can take out these airborne units with ease without the need to resort to the new air attack. It's still pretty much personal preference as to which stance you like, but for me, Rending Crane just offers the most balance between damage and utility and provides a much more rounded weapon to use. Okay, so let's move on to having a quick look at how we're going to mod the Gram. Now we have got a whole bunch of mods that are going to remain the same between the three builds, and I'm also going to show you how I would change the build up if I was going to do it myself with the use of event mods. Now we're going to start off with our stance slot, which is going to be Rending Crane. We're then going to go Fury, Pressure Point, Jagged Edge and Spoiled Strike, with also Berserker and True Steel. Now the reason I go with Spoiled Strike and I've got no crit damage multiplier increase on here, it's because when it doesn't crit, you really want to have the extra damage from Spoiled Strike. Because it's only going to crit just under 1 in 3, having that ability to still be able to do an insane amount of damage using Spoiled Strike, it really does increase the damage more than having that crit damage multiplier on there. Now we're going to move on to our Grineer build, which is going to be Shocking Touch at rank 10 and Molten Impact also at rank 10. For that radiation damage against the heavy Grineer. Now having a quick look at our Corpus build, again we've got the same build, but we've got Northwind and Shocking Touch to bring up that magnetic damage against the shielded Corpus units. And our Void build, Virulent Scourge and Shocking Touch, which is going to bring up corrosive damage against those Void units. Now if you have them available, it's definitely worth changing out the damage mods for, if I can find them in here, we've got Volcanic Edge if you have that available, and also Voltaic Strike, which is going to bring up that radiation damage still, and also Jagged Edge for Buzzkill if you have that available, and that applies to all three of our builds. You can switch them out and that will buff up that status chance, which is, well, I prefer to have a little bit of status on all of my weapons, just because it does help with that crowd control a little bit more than not having it on, but it's really down to personal preference. Plus not everyone has all three of these mods, so not everybody can take advantage of that. So, onto my recommendation as to whether I feel that the Gram is worth the effort and worth the catalyst. And the answer to that is definitely yes, I would. Until the update 15.1 patch, the heavy weapons really were completely worthless, outclassed by every single melee class in the game, However, once that patch hit, it transformed the majority of them into genuine options. Much like the Fragger video I made recently, the Gram, when combined with that Berserker mod and Fury, are a combo to be reckoned with, having an insane amount of damage while retaining and enhancing that already pretty decent base speed that the weapon comes with. So onto the topic of maximising this weapon and whether it's worth putting Former onto it. And honestly, as with the majority of melee weapons, the Gram doesn't really need the Former to max it out. Although that said, it does come down to personal preference again. If you like having a bit of status on your weapon, as I do, you can change out those dash polarity damage mods for the dual stat, status and elemental mods, freeing up some room to change out that jagged edge for buzzkill if you have it available. If you prefer to go for pure elemental damage and do not want to buff up that status chance, then at least one Former is going to be required, just to free up enough space where there's 11-point dash polarity mods, and to change over to buzzkill if you have that available, bearing in mind that the weapon has absolutely no polarities whatsoever as new. As always guys, many thanks for watching. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, it helps me out a ton, and I shall see you in the next episode.